Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream. Welcome. If you're watching on the YouTube Shorts version, welcome. And if you're watching on the regular version, also welcome. And if you're watching on Twitch, Rumble, anything like that, also welcome as well. Hope you guys are having a great day. It is Saturday, so we're doing our live stream on all the platforms. I'm just checking to make sure that these places are live, which I believe it is. Let's see. Okay, perfect. All right, how's everybody doing today? I'm excited to talk about some funny stuff with you guys, which actually is not so funny, but it's pretty funny. So let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about the upcoming National Day in China, which has brought a lot of hilarious stuff to us. Then we're going to talk about China's attempt to eradicate poverty and some of the funny videos as well. And if you guys haven't already, check out the Tofu Dreg hat. It's available at davidzhang.net, and you can grab yours to support the channel, or if you want to be a Tofu Dreg specialist like me. And yeah, there we go. All right, so let's talk about this. In China, October 1st is so-called National Day. Basically, it's the kind of like, July 4th, right, of the United States. And many of the kindergartens and schools decided to give kids projects to do. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching on the short stream, let me know how the quality is, and if you're watching the regular stream, let me know how the quality is. Okay. Also, if you're watching on Twitch and Rumble as well as Kick, make sure to say hi in the chat as well. Hey everybody. Okay, so let's talk about this. Now, these kids, they're given this assignment, so they go back, and then they tell their mom or dad to help them make it. And a lot of them made bomb satchels. So basically, there's this whole idea during the anti-Japanese war, like the CCP keeps using this as a propaganda point. Basically, they're saying that these soldiers would carry bomb satchels on their back, and they would like climb up to these machine gun turrets or like these machine gun hideouts, and they would like throw the satchel with the bomb inside of it into the hideout and blow up people inside, which it's kind of ridiculous because if you're running all the way up to that machine gun nest, people probably would have seen you. But anyways, so it became like an urban legend among the CCP to always say like, the kids, you got to educate the kids starting young, so you give them the bomb satchel. That's what these kids are making for their National Day celebration, which is weird. So there's a lot of these now. I find it pretty funny. It looks pretty hilarious. So that's the old style, the grenades, and that's the bomb satchel. You gotta have the flag on it as well. Right. So it's across China. So instead of celebrating it like how regular people are supposed to, they celebrate by making bomb satchels. Pretty funny. Okay. So, hey guys. Welcome. From Tran Viet Hui, do you think South China should separate from North and CCP? I don't know, what do you mean by South China? You mean like Taiwan? All right, so the funny thing is, a parent made a, let me see if there's, yeah, this might be better for viewing. Let's go to the beginning. So a parent made a Tiananmen Square out of cardboard box, right? That's the Tiananmen Gate. And another parent made a tank out of cardboard box as well. And these two happen to just meet each other in the same school. Oh man. So obviously, the whole 1989 June 4th Tiananmen Square thing is very real, and it's censored in China. And this video was uploaded to Douyin, and then it was taken down very quickly. Because obviously you can't have the tank and you can't have the Tiananmen Square all in the same picture, because that's just pretty ridiculous. Hey guys, welcome. Well, it's the foundation, I believe, is November, but the National Day is October 1st. If that's what you mean. Reminds you of Vietnam. Lionel Lieutenant says, just came here to say hi. Really love your content. Thank you very much. I'm trying to see if, okay, well, it is doing a vertical stream, so that's good. All right, and then, so that's pretty funny. Basically, my whole gist with this is that even though these kids are in, kindergarten or elementary school, you gotta start the nationalism education at a very young age, right? You have to ingrain into their head that certain factions are bad and certain things are good. And that's what they do. So, very interesting. All right, now let's talk about this. So this is China. What they've done is they've offered a one-time cash allowance for those who are in extreme poverty. And this just took place yesterday, which is, well, actually a few days ago, but it started to kind of get very popular in terms of talking about it yesterday. So for you guys who don't know, China in 2021 claimed that they had eradicated all extreme poverty in China, and Xi Jinping declared victory on it. So basically he says in 2021 there's no more poor people, like extreme poverty, right? So there's still people who are obviously making lower income, but there's not extreme poverty in the sense that they've achieved this. So this was February of 2021. Now, less than 3 years later, actually more than 3 years later, almost 4 years, China's Xi Jinping says his country has achieved the miracle of eradicating extreme poverty. We're now back to giving stimulus, cash checks, to the extreme in poverty. So what does that tell us? It means China didn't eliminate extreme poverty at all. In fact, what they had done to achieve this is very interesting because all they claim is that there's no more poverty, but did it really solve the problems? Not really. Blueberry Perry says, I love watching China Insider because Vietnam doesn't have any channel like yours. Yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder if there'll be like a Vietnam Insider. Leo S. asks, aren't we in the States having a debate on censorship in schools? People are pushing to erase slavery from teaching curriculum, and that's arguably worse than Tiananmen. Well, I mean, I don't think, in my experience, anyone's trying to erase slavery in the school. I've seen people who obviously want to teach different aspects of slavery, but I've never seen people talking about erasing slavery in the school. T. Nun asks, what is the definition of extreme poverty? So that's a great question, and I'll show you. Now, this is from the Global Times, which is a Chinese state media. In 2020, Li Keqiang, who is the former premier, so he basically is supposed to run the economic side of things, he said that 600 million people in China still live on $140 monthly in terms of income. So that is what I would say is considered extreme poverty. So 600 million in 2020 still lived on extreme poverty levels of income. It's impossible to eradicate poverty. Lust for wealth will always divide people into classes of wealth. Yeah, that's true. That also happens in China, right? So you have a lot of things talking about, how everybody's supposed to be equal in this like socialist, communist society, but really there's not a lot of equality going on in China. Let's just say that. Michelle says, the poverty line is something like $200 a year in China. Kind of bad to think to live with your whole family. $200 a year, is it $200 a month? $200 is still not a lot. Mike Stewart asked, David, similar to your China Fix Everything Volume 1 to 99 series, can you do a rundown on the very sensitive calendar dates in China? There's really only like one, which is June 4th, 1989. Halloween 2017 says, you should collab with Lawa86. Yeah, sure. I just haven't reached out. I've been quite busy doing stuff myself, so I just haven't reached out. I finally did a collab with Chris Chappell from China Uncensored, but that was like a month, in the making. So yeah, it takes a lot of time for these kind of things to come through, which is fine. Okay, so going back to this, right? So what they did was this week, China announced that there's going to be a set of cash stimulus into the system because they have no other ways to deal with the Chinese economy. It's just doing horribly. And part of that stimulus, which apparently hasn't been done in a while, is to provide a handout to extremely poor people, orphans, or other needy people on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of founding of the new China. And the subsidies will be doled out before China's National Day on October 1st to promptly convey the party and government's care and concern for the needy. So a lot of people are saying, like, if you really solved extreme poverty, you wouldn't need this, right? You wouldn't need a stimulus to do that. But because, like, overall, the Chinese economy right now is just running very poorly, Xi Jinping has to do stimulus check. He has to print money. He has to stimulate the economy. It's going to do a very short-term recovery, but it's also not going to solve the fundamental issue in China, which is basically, there's no confidence in the system anymore. So once you don't have confidence, you're bound to fall into this slope of decline. And this really, it happened to Japan for 30, 40 years. They're barely out of it. They might go back into it. It's happening to China. There's declining population. There's aging population. So a lot of these factors are outside of the economy, so to speak. They're long-term issues, right? And then, you can't really solve any of that with a stimulus. Exotic says, do you live in the US? If so, do you feel safe in the USA? I actually feel really safe in the US. I haven't found myself in a situation, on the streets or different hours where I felt unsafe. But that's just my experience, right? I live in New York City. I don't, I'm not very acquainted with the rest of the country in terms of, like, say if you live in California, is it different, things like that. But New York generally it's very safe, right? Obviously there's crime, right? I'm not denying that there's crime around, but I feel safe. I think that's what most New Yorkers would say too. Alan, whose economy per person looks better, China or Vietnam? I think at this point, maybe even Vietnam. China's really slowing down. From Sean, unemployment figures don't count rural employment and pensions are divided between urban and rural, with rural getting much less money. CCP points only urban numbers. If you're talking about unemployment, so it's supposed to be the whole country, but usually, yeah, urban, it's very different. Now that's another thing. Good thing you mentioned this, Sean, about the situation in China. So, that's not what I want. Okay, so China has been doing this, like, eradicating, poverty for many years now, right? Deng Xiaoping famously said that half of the country will get rich first, and then the other half will get rich after. But what's been stopping China from, like, they claim for the past 4 decades, they've done something like lift 800 million people out of poverty, right? They claim that. So they're saying that China lifted 800 million people out of poverty. But what's really happening is, what's stopping them from doing it to the other half, 600 million, is that there are certain things like the residence permit in place, which basically dictates where you can go to school, where you can work, whether you get paid certain amount, whether you are allowed to, buy places in certain parts of the country. If you have a rural residence permit, it basically means that you're stuck in the rural countryside for almost, your entire life unless something drastic happens, which in China, there's so many people. Even the 600 million people that's in poverty line, that's almost double the population of the United States. So you imagine if you have 2 United States population worth of people living in that economic situation. And then how can you basically solve their issues if you don't even give them the chance to improve their situation, right? So you have a lot of roadblocks. So one is the rural permit, which stops you from getting good opportunities. The second one is the vast difference in terms of education from the cities to the rural area. Underdevelopment, obviously, but then you also have the population issue, right? Huge amounts of competition. People are always looking to find, there's a term in China, it's called inner circulation, right? So you have way too many people looking for the same jobs. You have so much competition. Supposedly in a society that's built on the socialist idea, which is supposed to distribute wealth to everybody, you have way more competition in China than you do in other countries. Question from Wowzers, what do you think of the Chinese company like Baidu? So every Chinese company is essentially listening to the CCP, and Baidu being one that is obviously, it's like Google in China, so they have a huge amount of data. They have access to a lot of technology. Things like they're doing right now is AI. All these things are very important for the CCP. So all Chinese companies have to listen to the government. Thank you very much. You're doing God's work. Thank you very much. Uh, from Steve, do you know Serpent ZA? I do. I watch his stuff a lot. I, in fact, started doing this. Like, before I started doing this, I watched their stuff. So I really like their work. Uh, from Bing Bondi says, the current condition of China is concerning. It's very concerning. What this, so people are going to be asking the question, like, what does this indicate if, they're offering this type of cash allowance, right? It means that they're, so what was happening before is that you have two populations, right? Let's do can we do like a paint? Let's do an MS Paint picture. So maybe we can show off what it looks like in terms of a graph. Can I zoom in on this or no? Image. How do I zoom in on this? Okay, maybe I wouldn't zoom in. Okay, so let's say we're back in 2010. Okay, 2010. So in 2010, you essentially had something like this. You had two populations, right? You had very much this divided line of population between the poor and the rich. So this is the poor, and this is the rich, right? So back then, what the situation was is that this was pretty much like, we could say 50% of the population in China were poor, and the other 50% were rich. So that's 2010, right? And then basically you had more people going from the, oh, maybe not yellow. Yellow might not be a good option. You had more people going from the poor to the rich. This was the trajectory that they were on. So more people back in 2010, they were moving from the poor population to the rich population, right? So that was 2010. And then what happened in 2014, or sorry, not 2014, 2024, where's the eraser? So back now in 2024, 2024 is you have the opposite happening. You have a drop in the number of rich. You have a shift from the rich to the poor. And this trajectory is basically, so if China was in a graph, right? So this would be like 10 years ago. This is now. So this was 10 years ago. It would look something like this. So it's like always going downwards. And that's like basic, I don't know like if this makes sense, but that's basically how things are with China right now. So Wowzer says a really good question. Do you think of what Ray Dalio's book, The Changing of the World Order? So Ray Dalio, if you've been paying attention to him, even Ray Dalio today, who he's very much a China apologist, he's been wanting to keep China open. He's even shifted his stance on China. That's how bad things are. Okay, so it's very horrible what they're going through in China. People are changing. Yellow the color of. From Sean says, also they lifted most of the extreme poverty by lowering the number that defines extreme poverty. If a person earning $10 is poor, CCP says $9 is poor. Now they aren't. Exactly, right? So they can shift a lot of the definition around. Yeah, it's very interesting. What about the Chinese presence in Sri Lanka? So Sri Lanka's current, like, they went through a whole series of riots last year, right? Protests, because Sri Lanka bought into China's One Belt and One Road project, Belt and Road Initiative. And look what happened to the country. They were hugely in debt to China. They also were part of that, World Economic Forum sort of green agenda. They shifted to that way too fast, and they didn't have the basic capability to produce, and that resulted in a huge problem for the country. How is life in China as a middle class, in your opinion? Life in China as a middle class was good for many years, until recently. Now it's sort of a struggle. So for a lot of people, like they have some savings, right? Middle class in China is really what defines the whole real estate situation. Actually, here, let me do another drawing. This might be helpful to understand where things are in the middle class situation in China. So again, we'll go to, so in 2010, this is the middle class, right? So your entire goal is basically to buy a home in an apartment complex, right? All your like savings, all of your savings goes towards buying a house. And you did that a lot in China. So back in the days, 2010, everybody got rich, so you bought a lot of houses, right? And then when 2014 came around, oops. So I keep saying 2014. I mean 2024. Actually, let's go to 2020, because 2020 is really where things kind of took a turn. So in 2020, no more buying houses. This is like over. So no, here I'll do this, and then red. No more buying houses. What people started doing is they basically shielded themselves from this whole real estate market. They started saving up more and more money for them to pocket into the banks or whatever, right? Since then, like fast forward to today, people aren't willing to buy houses in China. And because real estate is such an integral part of the Chinese economy, it's about 30%, if not more. When people don't buy houses, you no longer have the actual amount of cash into the housing market. And so we started seeing crashes, right? So when you see crashes, more people are like, okay, we got to save the money because there's political turmoil in China. There's a lot of turbulence. We're not going to spend money, right? So more people don't spend money, less purchases, consumer downgrades, things like that happen in China. And then we suddenly get essentially we're onto deflation in China, and we're looking at a potential 2008 financial crisis in China. Based MW, thanks for the $1. Drawn to scale, look at the gap on the floor. That's pretty funny, Yan. So very interesting. All right. Now, what happened was back in 2021, which is when China claimed that his government, so this is Xi Jinping saying that the government over an 8 years period, nearly 100 million people have been lifted out of poverty, right? So this is what he claims. But starting in 2021, they were already saying things that were not matching up to the status of the Chinese economy. So basically, what they did was define the measurements like Sean had just mentioned, right? So in China, extreme poverty is defined as earning less than $620 a year. And this is different because according to the current criteria, all 98.99 million poor rural population have been taken out of poverty, and 832 poverty-stricken counties as well as 128,000 villages have been removed from the poverty list. But I think this is definitely not what is considered a poverty, like what is considered the commonly understood poverty line. And then here it says, threshold set by China is defined extremely poverty amounts to $1.69 a day at the current exchange rate compared to the World Bank global threshold at $1.90. So their poverty line is actually higher. So if you get out of the 169, then you're not considered extreme poverty anymore. But you're still not meeting the global standard. So that's what I think China did. So basically to kind of move that 100 million people out of the extreme poverty. But they didn't really do that. So I think it's hilarious now because while I don't wish for people in China to be suffering, I do think that people need to understand what's going on, which is that China often fakes their data. Corn Dog says, I was talking to my barber about the Huawei triple fold and I showed him your video about the double fold fail and he was in disbelief. Yeah, I mean, I just also saw a video today of people like this girl. It's very horrible. I won't show it to you, but this girl, like, she had the phone behind her in like her pocket in the back and exploded. And, you know, it was horrible. It was a horrible thing. Boris asks, was the bear option for investing in the Chinese market? You mean the best option for investing in the Chinese market? Well, investing in the Chinese market, it depends on what you're looking at. There's a lot of industries where you could do like short-term investments because you don't know what the long-term deals will be. If you do like a short-term, like a year kind of thing, right? I think it's fine if you're just in it for the short term. But if you're looking for long-term, I don't think China's the good fit for you. Sean Wu says, ask, why are you deleting my comments? I don't know why I'm not deleting your comments. Okay, so I'm going to show you some videos of what's actually, the current situation in China. Now, these videos, I basically found them on Twitter. There's probably plenty more. But yeah, like, this is a very common thing in China. When I was in China, there's a lot of places that are still like this. So you have people living, this is definitely rural area, right? Because in urban settings, you won't find this. But I've also done some videos where they have these like extreme coffin homes where you can pay $600 to live, near Shanghai, and but it's like a very, very tiny one, right? So you got this kind of living situation. It's horrible. A lot of these are older people. This is more of a current ongoing situation. So you have a lot of job seekers in China. They are doing temporary works. So in order to save money, they stay in these like compounds and stuff like that. It's very sad. So this is like a pretty telling situation in China. And it goes all the way to the end too. Let me see if I can zoom in. Okay, this might be a bigger picture. Yeah, so you get a lot of these empty buildings that are used for temporary housing in China. People just kind of sleep on the ground with a little sleeping bag. You got a lot of these people. A lot of them, don't make enough money to support themselves throughout their 3 meals a day, let alone trying to find a place. So they just simply crash wherever they can. From Beth, thanks for the 10. Is that Swiss franc? CHF? Is that Swiss franc? But thank you very much. And thank you to Jay for the $5. Pray for Chinese people. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's a pretty sad situation. Wait, why does it keep going to the side? All right, some more. So this also, again, is a job-seeking market. Every day you have these daily works, so you get paid at the end of the day. You have a lot of people, they go there in the morning and they basically just try to find jobs. And this is happening across China too. So a lot of these are construction jobs. A lot of them are cleaning jobs. A lot of them are hard labor, definitely. And a lot of these are seeking jobs after they've lost their main job, right? So delivery driving is a big industry in China. And even that is facing a lot of competition. So you have people everywhere just looking for temporary jobs. So you see those boards in the back, those are the listing boards that people can go and get money. And then, obviously you have some of these cases of homeless people in China. It's very sad. And they're not really doing anything. Like when people claim there's no homelessness in China, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous how bad it is. Same thing here, you got like street vendors who are just selling anything to get by. Jocelyn, thanks for the $5. CHF is Swiss franc. Thank you very much. Grace Johnson asked, am I a Chinese bot? I don't think you are. Question from QWERTY says, did not expect you to do a live stream. Yeah, we do live streams every Saturday. So come join us, 12 p.m. Eastern. Is this T-Non says, is this like a labor ready where you go and work for a day? Yeah, basically you do that. There's actually videos on YouTube that you can watch of people kind of doing that temporary work. Marilyn Yo says, we have homelessness everywhere on earth, even America. Yeah, definitely, there's homelessness everywhere. Corndog32 says, I'm not Chinese, but this is just sad to watch. What does the future look like for Chinese people? Can people even do anything about this? It's very hard because, like I mentioned, there's a lot of fundamental issues here. It's less to do with what can people do now. It's more like what can people do on a fundamental level that, solves this problem, right? Well, the only thing that can work is if you have a better government. Gary, hi David, thanks. Hi Gary. What do I think of Adam Seeker? I don't know who that is. You also have this one. This actually shocked me. So I'll try to translate what this is. So this is them eating grass, and it's doing a performance, okay? So according to the context here, it says a Chinese couple with their post begging for money to pay for their child's medical expenses. In order to attract attention and show sincerity, they perform eating grass on the street. So there is their WeChat number. Says, hello everybody, we're a pair of parents from Hunan. Our child has been taken to the hospital and is in a hospital ward. Now I've already spent 700,000 to do a transplant, but now he has gotten an infection in his lungs, and there is a rejection of some sort of a lung, or maybe the lungs or something like that. But I assume this is from the transplant. Now I have no more money to continue the operation and treatment, so please help us with a helping hand to rescue our 9-year-old son. Thanking you on our knees. If we perform well, please help our son. Thank you, everybody. So that is them eating grass. Imagine you have to beg for money in China to get a hospital treatment because the government won't help you. You know why? Because the Chinese, it's so weird because in a lot of these countries where people like, they have a socialist system, right? Like the Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, or maybe even think of Canada, right? You have universal health care. You're supposed to get free treatments in a lot of these situations, and you don't have to pay any out-of-pocket expense, right? To stay in a hospital, ambulance, whatever. In the United States, you also have health insurance, which will cover a majority of the cost. Yes, it will be more expensive because you have to pay some amount, but it's still less expensive than this. What a lot of insurances in China does is actually, for one, you have to be of a certain level to get insurance, right? So if these people are just regular folks, their insurance coverage sucks, or they just don't have any at all. There's no universal insurance in China for a country that is supposed to be built on a socialist economy. And also what they do in a lot of deduction situations is that instead of paying for most of the amount, because that's what most insurance do, they pay you for, the insurance will cover the smaller amount. So you have to pay the higher cost out of pocket. That's why here it's, for them, they exhausted 700,000 yuan of savings already to treat the child. It's like, it doesn't make sense, right? Because if you have 700,000 yuan for savings, you should only be spending it until the deduction amount is reached and then the insurance kicks in. But apparently in China it's the opposite, which is super crazy. Bloxfruit says, don't they have insurance? Yeah, so their insurance doesn't work like that. ZZZ says, China isn't socialism anymore. The only people who are hurt are the people at the bottom. China is essentially a socialism in name, corruption at the core, using capitalist methods to make money, and still saying that they're supposed to preach communism. That's basically the good summary of it. Reality Check says being at the bottom is laziness. It might be laziness, but a lot of the people, what they don't have is they don't have access to, so this is the biggest difference between the United States and China, right? In the US, you can be at the bottom. You can be, living in Section 8 housing. You can be eating food stamps, living off of food stamps. But as long as you have the ability to try, or as long as you have the will to try, right? You can make a better life out of it, right? You have people like rappers are great examples of this, right? They have, they have the talent of rapping, and they put a music out to the world, and then boom, suddenly, they might be in the ghetto, but they move up, they become rich. But the thing is, in China, the chance of you doing that is so little, not because you don't have talent or there's no discover of your talent, but because there's so many people, right? Imagine it's like you have double the amount of people who are good at what you do versus where you could have done that same success in the United States because you have more opportunities, less people. But in China, because there's so many people, it's so hard. The competition is very, very fierce. Chinchilla says, meanwhile, Taiwan has universal health care that cares for its people. Yeah, it's actually pretty crazy. Now it says my Twitch is offline. Why? Let me refresh it and see if it's offline or not. No, it's online. It's working. From Twitch says tier class levels of insurance, not surprising, I guess. Yeah, it really depends on how you look at it. You know, if it's you're working for the CCP, you got plenty of options. If you're working as a nobody, you know, you don't have a lot of options. Silly Watermelon Cat says, what China city is the best for a first-time trip there? I'd visit the big ones, Shanghai or Beijing, probably. Danielle says, CCP is hypocritical. Yeah, they are the biggest hypocrites in the world. Wheezy Squeezy Box says, who was the unfortunate lung donor? Yeah, you have that problem too. Johnson33 says, I've also heard that China has a large number of university graduates with about 30% being overqualified for their jobs, right? Yeah, so China currently has a young people joblessness issue. So basically, every June, right, you have millions of graduates who can't find jobs. What they do is, let's say they have a master's degree in philosophy, okay? Now, master's degree in philosophy doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna land a good job. But I think there are more routes for you to go to with the philosophy's masters than like in other countries than in China. Because what you end up probably doing is trying to find a job as a delivery man. Whereas, you know, because there's just no other jobs available. Whereas in the United States, you know, you could be working at Starbucks with a master's in philosophy, or maybe you could work for a publication, right? You could become a journalist and things like that. Again, because there's so many people in China, the competition is just way too fierce. People are willing to be overqualified for their position because they know that, right? For example, if an employee is willing to take $3,000 a month for a copywriting job versus a guy who says, okay, well, I'm overqualified for this job and I'm not willing to only get 3,000. Who is the guy, you know, the employer going to hire? They're going to hire the guy who's willing to do it, even if they have the same qualification or if that guy has better qualification. Because they know that right now the market in China is one where the employers matter rather than the employees. Sorry, I'm reading chat here. Does China have a welfare program like the US? It doesn't. That's why China has a huge poverty issue. There's no welfare program. What they speak of in terms of welfare, like if you're hungry in China, you know, there's no like soup kitchens and things like that you can go to. Because everything, so since the 1980s, everything has been so hyper materialistic that there's no room for sort of welfares to grow in China. Because also the government doesn't really care because they can just say like, you know, we eradicated poverty. We don't need welfare soup kitchens. We don't need food banks. We don't need any of that. Which actually, you know, this is a very shocking thing because I'll tell you a story of mine. When I first moved from China, right? Like obviously, you know, we weren't that, like we're not rich or anything like that. So we went to a food bank for the first time. People were introduced, like they were like, oh yeah, by the way, you know, do you guys know you can, like if you want to, like you don't have enough money for food, you can go to a food bank. And I was like, what's a food bank? So we went to a food bank, you know, you get registered and you get, you know, they tell you what the details are. You come in, you know, with your car and you get food, right? So we ended up getting so much food. Like we got like fresh veggies, we got canned food, you know, we got like snacks, we got pasta, rice, and all these things, right? I was like, this is so crazy. Like, how can you get this in like you don't have that in China. If somebody's hungry, they have to run to their grandparents. If you don't have grandparents, you know, they have to beg for food or, you know, whatever the case may be. It's so strange. It was really bizarre for me to say that people are giving away free food. That's crazy to me. At least it was back then. So yeah, it's a whole different mentality. 404 not found. Is there job security in China? Well, there was job security in China. One of the best job that you can be is this guy. Public servant China. Image. Okay, so let's go here. Wait, why doesn't it show? Oh, because I'm on the wrong tab. Okay, so one of the best jobs that you could have been in China a few years ago is somebody called a civil servant, basically government employees, right? So government employees can range anywhere from if you work for the security bureau, you work for the central government, whatever the case may be, but you get paid really well. But what happened today is that some of the local governments, the civil servants, they're also not getting paid, or they're getting a salary downgrade, or they're getting a lot of the benefits cut. This used to be called the iron rice bowl of China, which is like you get into this job, it's job security. Now even government positions, they're not safe from job cuts anymore. So that's how crazy things have gotten. And this was happening a few years ago. This is not new either. This is not like 2024. This is like 2020, 4 years ago. It's pretty crazy. Bugo says, what do you think about China with BRICS? So the BRICS is obviously China's attempt to usurp the current G20 nations, the G7 nations, things like that. They're trying to change the world by saying that BRICS is better. It's the alternative way. So that's why they're trying to rally all these countries from the global south together, right? And you see how India and China's dynamics really shift because India is also trying to be the leader of the so-called global south. So I think BRICS is China's big, ambitious attempt at trying to be the number one in the world. Robert Yu says, David, how did you have opinions about China as you have today? Well, so I was always interested in the country that I came from. And I always thought that, because I always, like through experience, I always knew that the government was bad. And, growing up, I had been paying attention to what was happening in China. But it has gotten so bad, especially when COVID started. I think that's what me and many others started to realize. It was like, this is crazy. There's a lot of opportunities for people to understand, China is great, but the government's not. And the people in the government should be separately looked at. But sometimes they are the same thing because those in power are definitely not the Chinese people that when we say, the Chinese people we're talking about. But those are the evil ones who are, trying to ruin it for everybody else. But yeah, my opinion of China really shifted a lot when COVID hit. Desperado, thanks for the $10. I appreciate what you do. Hopefully your work will bring fruit to many. Thank you very much. From Liv says, what's so crazy about food pantries is that I get food from them being a poor-ass grad student, but my family thinks I should be ashamed for doing that. They're too proud. That's interesting. I mean, I have no shame in terms of, like, if I actually needed help, I would go, right? But if I'm a contributing member of society, like, I wouldn't want to, like, steal from others, but stuff like that. But that's the beauty, I think, of the options, right? If you are truly struggling, and I understand, having gone through college, it's a tough time. A lot of people don't make enough money having to study and work part-time still. Like they can't put food in their mouth, so they go to the food bank. It's very common for college students to do that. So I don't see what's to be ashamed of. But the point is you have options, right? You have these things that can help you if you are having a hard time. Which I often think is so sad for the people in China that they don't have this. That's why also there's a current situation with girls in China. Many girls, like many young girls, they go into like escorting and things like that because there's just no other ways for them to survive. There's whole videos out there you can look, but there's like Chinese so-called red light districts, or not even red light districts, just like these little rundown shacks that you see a girl standing in front of, which is pretty sad. Braindead says, listening to this while cleaning, thank you for opening my eyes. I love learning about things like this. Dre asks, how has your views changed post-COVID? Well, basically, I was very hawkish on China. I became even more hawkish on China. And yeah, that's pretty much it. What are your opinions on Douyin? Douyin is well, I have to use Douyin because I'm researching a lot of videos, but it's actually it's very difficult for people to not be attracted to that stuff. There's so many different videos on there. And I personally think like Douyin is basically TikTok, but like the Chinese version, right? it's a mental stimulus to the point where people are like, you lose your attention span. You know, you're taking of information. You get brainwashed very easily on Douyin. It's crazy. Is there any other? Oh yeah, we got this video is pretty disgusting. So that's a woman in her maybe 40s or 50s, and she forgot to turn on her beauty filter, and then she turned it on. Gosh, it's so crazy. I just saw this today. I was like, I gotta show it on stream. It's absolutely crazy. The amount of catfishing going on in China. Look at the huge difference. Before, after. That's crazy. Oh yeah, let's talk about this. So Japan recently elected their new president of the LDP, which is basically the next prime minister of Japan. Ishiba Shigeru, which is who was a former defense minister and former agricultural minister as well. And he was defense minister. So here's the interesting thing, right? A lot of people think this guy is, Shigeru Ishiba is a very soft on China guy, because he was the defense minister of Japan during a period where the relationship between China and the rest of the world was rather peaceful. So like I'm talking like 2003 to 2012, right? So he was defense minister during that time, and people thought this guy's pretty soft on China. So what I've been reading up on this guy is that he is advocating for like an Asia version of NATO, which obviously, you know, is targeted towards the CCP, right? So from that point, I personally think that he's not that soft anymore. Maybe he had a change of heart. Maybe his view of China changed since then, right? I mean, he was defense minister a decade ago, and that was a way different situation than now. So maybe his whole opinion about China changed. He's also now wanting to do things like nuclear energy in Japan. He also wants to increase the self sort of identity of the Japanese Defense Force, which you know, obviously is their military, but he wants more autonomy rather than control from the United States. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but obviously the United States is opposed to this whole NATO idea in Asia. But he's all about he's identifying at least the threat from China and North Korea. So I would say that let's see how this guy goes. Today it's very hard in Japan especially, it's very hard to be so-called, you know, a dovish on China, like wants to have a warm tie with China. So we'll see. Because to be honest, like Fumio Kishida, the prime minister before him, was also kind of soft on China in a sense that he didn't really do much of what Shinzo Abe did. Because Shinzo Abe, before his assassination, he was really like a hardline, right? He had to deal with this whole Senkaku Island situation, so he was a really tough guy on China. And then, but you see how afterwards they kind of continued that trend, right? So it didn't really fall off. So I don't expect him to also shift Japan's policies around so much. Asia version of NATO would be badass. Yeah, it would be. Shubham Day says, what's your take on China debt trapping financially unstable nations and buying their assets? China is still wanting to do that, and they continue to do that. It's a terrible thing, and a lot of countries seem to have no other options but to accept the offers from China. So I think it's unfortunate. I think it needs to be more education. Marco Lopez says, hi, this is the first time I catch you live. What's your opinion about the West Philippine Sea invaded by China? Oh yeah, so China is very aggressive in the West Philippines. And I think it's waking up a lot of people in Asia about what they're planning to do with the South China Sea. They're going to claim the entirety to themselves. So countries like the Philippines, which is very much moving away from China now, but Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, all these countries need to step up. Yeah, Japan is a de facto one-party state. Their LDP party has been in power for so long. What time is it right now? It's about almost 1 o'clock. Master Malrubius, thanks for the $5. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Have you seen the news on Alice Guo, says JM. I did a video already. Go check it out. It's on my channel, the latest video released. Bomb with Jack says, thanks for your service, state-based. Thank you very much. Liv says, hey, I'm curious, are you blocked from communicating with family or friends in China because of the information that you share here? Censorship and getting blocked from speaking out is crazy. So interesting you asked that. I did have an experience here. So I was using Chinese Chinese apps to like talk to my friends back in China. And basically they banned me off the app because I was telling them some stuff about, the CCP, and they didn't like it. So since then, I lost communication with all my friends in China. I doubt they want to hang out with me anymore, considering the fact that they probably think I'm like a traitor to them or something, or like a spy to them. So I to say that I'm cut off from communications with friends, yes. Family member, no. Is there a way for me to show chat on screen? Like, is there a option to do that? Let me see. Like if I want to, there must be a way to show chat on screen, right? How do I like just get this part of the window? Oh, maybe if I do like a capture thing. Hold on, give me a sec. Let me try this. I want to see if it works or not. Screen capture card, image slideshow, Mac OS screen capture, video capture, Mac OS screen capture maybe. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Well, it is showing that now. Display capture, window capture. Jokes, I don't know what to do. Okay, let me delete this. Okay, never mind. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so let's go back to this. From the cousin of Jimmy Bob, David, what's your favorite part of Chinese history? The many heroes of Chinese history, from the Three Kingdoms to Yue Fei, who is the most important figure in the Song Dynasty, to the heroes of how do I describe it? Like the Han Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, they all have heroes. Tang Dynasty as well. So I really liked reading Chinese history on all of these like warriors and heroes of the past. So that's my favorite part. Fahmi Hazizi says, can you say again about China trying to spread and claim their territory on the South China Sea? So what China's been doing is something called a salami slicing technique, right? Salami slicing technique is salami slicing. It's literally how it looks. So it's literally salami slicing. So this is basically what it is. Show you here. So salami slicing means essentially I'm going to slowly take apart your claim to this thing. So for the South China Sea, they basically went to this island and they say that this is ours. Right? Nobody seems to be bothered with the fact that China said so. So they started putting like sand onto to fill up the island, to the point where they have like rockets or landing strips or military installations on those islands. And then now they claim that because we already have those things on there, that's ours. So that's called salami slicing. Piece by piece, slice by slice, they capture a lot of this, right? So with the South China Sea, with the Philippines involved. So China just randomly went to this part of the Philippines, which is like 800 nautical miles off the coast of China, but like less than 200 off the coast of the Philippines. So just by sheer distance, and I'll show you on maps. Okay, so this is the South China Sea, right? We got something called the Spratly Islands here. These are much closer to the Philippines than they do to China. China's all the way up here. And then they want to claim the Spratly Islands here. They also want to claim the Paracel Islands, which again, this kind of, right, they can argue because it's close to Hainan, whatever. But then they got to a point where they want to claim second Thomas Shoal. They got to the point they want to claim this thing here. It's called the Second Thomas Shoal. Okay? and it has this like a boat on there. Okay, it's not really a boat anymore. It's a Overwatch station, or like a station that people. So basically, the Philippines would send soldiers on there. So this tiny little island, which is very close to the Philippines. This is the Philippines. They're very close to it, right? China says, no, this is ours. So for the past few years, they basically surrounded this area with Coast Guard ships, and they started bullying the fishermen and the Coast Guards of the Philippines, with which obviously they have much smaller ships. And then they're like, oh yeah, the Philippines is the one that's violating international standards, not the Chinese. And then the Chinese Coast Guards were basically blasting like these ships with water cannons. They had a brawl and things like that all over the small island. But because China's idea is that this entirety of the South China Sea is theirs, any little piece can become a point of provocation for the CCP to start something. So that's why there's a huge talk right now. Could China go to war with the Philippines over the South China Sea before something like Taiwan starts, right? Because they know that they can bully the Philippines, and if the Philippines doesn't seek help from the United States, then the potential of disaster could happen and there's nobody to help them. So my thing is that if countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei, right, can really go and come up with a plan, and also Thailand too, but less degree because Thailand is kind of back here. But Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei are the key here. They can kind of force China to back off. That'd be great, but they won't do it because China is spending a lot of effort to try to get them to cave to China. Nasaj007 says the 9-dash line, right? The 9-dash line is a very illegal claim. Marilyn Yo says, you don't want them to claim small islands when the West claims Africa and India. I don't know what you mean by claiming Africa and India, because India is a sovereign country. African countries are sovereign countries, but the little island is within the distance of the law of the sea, right? So it's technically belonging to the Philippines. Man of all seasons, Indo seems pro-West, though. You're right. BGM says, what's your opinion about Pakistan and China relations? I think Pakistan has been a very close country to China for a very long time. China's been cultivating it because Pakistan is a direct, right here. So Pakistan is a direct problem to India. I don't know if you guys can see it on here, but it helps them open up the Kashmir corridor, right? So China can send in their One Belt, One Road through Pakistan. It also gives them access to the northern part of the Arabian Sea, which they can reach the Middle East down here. They can reach Iran, Afghanistan. So Pakistan is a core target for China, and also because Pakistan traditionally was technically like an ally of the United States. Like the United States sent a lot of their weapons there, so it's a very complicated relationship. But it's the one where China has successfully cultivated against India, especially very important now because India is clearly very anti-CCP in a sense because of the border dispute, but because of the Kashmir as well as the Arunachal Pradesh. Like the Ladakh area, right? The Ladakh region here. This is a heavily disputed area between Pakistan, India, and China. If China can work with Pakistan, it puts India in a bad spot. So, but I think it's actually a good thing because it's forcing India to have to go to the United States and really side with them on many issues now. I think that's a fundamental change from India's previous policies. And that's because of China. I hope that answered your question. Sonny Selak Jr. says, by the way, why is she called Winnie the Pooh? Great question. So Winnie the Pooh and she. Looks like, so it's an old meme now. But basically, Winnie the Pooh looked like Xi Jinping. Here, this is a better picture, I think. So Winnie the Pooh looked like Xi Jinping. And it became a meme in like 2010 or 2011. I think it was a little bit later than that, maybe 2014. But anyways, Xi Jinping didn't like that, so they banned the meme from China. Black Hunter says, does Muslim live in China? Yeah, Muslims live in China. Is China trying to capture land? Which part of the land? Henry, thanks for the 10 euro. So I can leave a toy of mine in the beach and say the point from where I live is mine now. If the boat, if Chinese make, it could be moved closer to China and say, hey, here you go. Yeah, it's pretty much like, it's such a childish claim too. So it's pretty ridiculous. Anyways, I think we're gonna stop the stream here. It's been an hour. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, we'll be streaming every Saturday at 12 p.m. for about an hour or so. So come join us and have a good chat. And yeah, so thanks for watching today. See you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.